Iran, a name that echoes through the corridors of history and headlines alike. But what if I told you that the destiny of Iran, its rise, its conflicts, and even its future, was written thousands of years ago in the ancient scrolls of the Bible? Most people know Iran as a modern nation, a geopolitical powerhouse, and a constant presence in the news. But few realize that Iran's story is woven into the very fabric of biblical prophecy under names and titles that have baffled scholars for centuries. Here's a fact that even many theologians miss. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, God calls a Persian king, Cyrus the Great, his anointed. That's right. The only non-Jew in the entire Bible to be called Messiah or Anointed One is a king from what we now call Iran. Let that sink in. The same land that today stands in fierce opposition to Israel was once the home of a ruler handpicked by God to deliver the Jewish people. But that's just the beginning. Hidden in the pages of Scripture are prophecies, warnings, and promises about Iran, sometimes called Persia, sometimes Elam, sometimes Media. These ancient names hold secrets that connect the past to the present and perhaps to the future that is unfolding before our very eyes. So, what does the Bible really say about Iran? Why does this nation play such a pivotal role in both ancient deliverance and end-time conflict? And what mysteries are still locked away, waiting to be revealed as history marches forward? Stay with me, because in this video, we're going to uncover the astonishing truth about Iran's biblical destiny, a story filled with twists, suspense, and revelations that will challenge everything you thought you knew about prophecy, history, and the world we live in today. Take a seat and relax, and listen to this amazing story. Iran, a land of paradoxes, ancient yet modern, mysterious yet ever-present in the world's gaze. Today, Iran is a nation that commands attention, not just for its rich culture and history, but for its undeniable influence on the global stage. Every week, headlines flash with news of Iran's nuclear ambitions, its tense standoffs with Israel, and its shadowy alliances with powers like Russia and China. The world watches as Iran's leaders make bold declarations, as its scientists push the boundaries of technology, and as its people navigate the cross-currents of tradition and revolution. But beneath the surface of politics and power plays, there's a deeper story, a story that stretches back millennia, to a time when Iran was known by other names: Persia, Elam, Media. It's a story that the Bible began telling long before the world's cameras ever turned toward Tehran. Here's a fact that rarely makes the news. Iran is home to one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth, with roots stretching back to the Elamite kingdoms mentioned in Genesis. The city of Susa, once the capital of Elam, is the very place where the biblical story of Esther unfolds, a story of intrigue, survival, and divine intervention. And yet, in the modern era, Iran's relationship with Israel is anything but friendly. The two nations stand on opposite sides of a deep ideological divide, their leaders trading threats and warnings, their militaries locked in a silent, high-stakes chess game across the Middle East. But is this enmity just a product of modern politics? Or is it the latest chapter in a much older saga, one that the Bible itself predicted? As we journey deeper, we'll see how the ancient prophecies and historical battles between Iran and Israel are not just relics of the past, but living realities that continue to shape our world today. And as we peel back the layers, you'll discover how the names, places, and events of the Bible are more relevant and more prophetic than ever before. To truly understand Iran's destiny, we have to step back in time, far beyond the modern borders and political headlines, to an era when the land we now call Iran was known by names that echo through the pages of the Bible: Persia, Elam, and Media. Here's a piece of uncommon knowledge. The name Iran is a relatively recent label. For thousands of years, this land was known to the world as Persia, a name that conjures images of mighty empires, legendary kings, and epic battles. It wasn't until 1935, at the request of its own government, that the country officially asked the world to call it Iran, a name derived from Aryan, meaning land of the Aryans. But the Bible knew this land long before the world did. In the book of Daniel, Persia emerges as a superpower, symbolized by a two-horned ram that charges west, north, and south, conquering everything in its path. This vision, recorded centuries before Persia's rise, predicted the empire's dominance with uncanny accuracy. And then there's Elam, an ancient kingdom in the southwest of modern Iran. Elam is mentioned in Genesis as one of the sons of Shem, and its people play a mysterious role throughout the Old Testament. In fact, the prophet Jeremiah delivers a cryptic prophecy against Elam, foretelling both its destruction and its eventual restoration, a prophecy that scholars still debate to this day. But perhaps the most astonishing connection is found in the story of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus, the founder of the Persian Empire, is not just a historical figure, he's a biblical legend. In Isaiah 45, written nearly 2 centuries before Cyrus was born, the prophet calls him by name and declares him God's anointed, chosen to set the Jewish people free from Babylonian captivity. No other foreign ruler receives such an honor in the entire Bible. Think about that. The only non-Israelite ever called anointed by God is a Persian king. It's a twist that defies expectations, a reminder that God's plans often unfold in the most unexpected ways, using the most unlikely people. As we peel back the layers of history, we see that Iran's biblical identity is far more complex and far more significant than most realize. It's a land of prophecy and paradox, of judgment and redemption, of ancient names that still shape the destiny of nations today. Now, if you're finding these hidden connections as fascinating as I am, why not hit that subscribe button and give this video a like? There's so much more to uncover as we dig deeper into the mysteries of Iran and Israel in the Bible. Don't miss out on the next revelation. Let's talk about Persia's role in biblical history. Persia's entrance onto the biblical stage is nothing short of dramatic. While many empires rose and fell in the ancient world, few left a mark as deep and as paradoxical as Persia did, especially in its relationship with the people of Israel. Let's start with a fact that's both astonishing and often overlooked. The Persian Empire, at its height, was the largest the world had ever seen, stretching from the Indus Valley in the east to the edges of Greece and Egypt in the west. Yet, unlike many conquerors, the Persians were known for their policy of tolerance, especially toward the Jews. The story of Cyrus the Great is a turning point not just in Jewish history, but in the entire biblical narrative. After decades of exile in Babylon, the Jewish people found an unexpected deliverer in Cyrus. The book of Ezra opens with a royal decree. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem. Ezra 1 to know. This wasn't just a political move. The Bible makes it clear. Cyrus was fulfilling a divine prophecy spoken by Isaiah nearly 200 years earlier. Imagine the shock, Jews in exile, reading the words of a prophet who had named their liberator generations before he was born. But Persia's role doesn't end with Cyrus. The book of Esther unfolds entirely within the Persian Empire, in the royal city of Susa. Here a Jewish woman becomes queen, and through her courage, the Jewish people are saved from annihilation. The festival of Purim, still celebrated today, is a living memory of this Persian-era deliverance. And then there's Daniel, who served in the courts of both Babylonian and Persian kings. Under Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian, Daniel's visions and prophecies shaped the future of empires. In Daniel 8, Persia is symbolized as a powerful ram, clashing with the goat of Greece, a vision that would play out centuries later in the rise of Alexander the Great. But here's a twist. While Persia was once Israel's deliverer, the Bible also hints at a future where Persia stands among Israel's adversaries. In the apocalyptic visions of Ezekiel 38 and 39, Persia is listed as a key ally of Gog, coming against Israel in the last days. This dual role, both friend and foe, sets the stage for a prophetic drama that is still unfolding. Persia's legacy in the Bible is one of paradox, a nation chosen to set God's people free, yet destined to stand with their enemies in the end times. It's a reminder that history is never simple, and that the destinies of nations are often written in layers, some visible, some hidden, all waiting to be revealed. Persia and Israel, friends, foes, and prophecies. The relationship between Persia and Israel is a tapestry woven with both threads of deliverance and strands of looming conflict, a story that stretches from the ancient world to the headlines of today. At first glance, Persia appears as an unlikely friend to Israel. Cyrus the Great, as we've seen, is celebrated in the Bible as a liberator. His decree not only allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem, but also provided resources to rebuild the temple. This act of kindness is so profound that the prophet Isaiah refers to Cyrus as a shepherd who will fulfill all of God's purpose. Isaiah 44:28. But the story doesn't end there. In the book of Esther, the Persian Empire becomes the setting for one of the most dramatic rescues in Jewish history. Haman, a high-ranking Persian official, plots to destroy the Jews. But through the courage of Queen Esther and the wisdom of her cousin Mordecai, the plot is foiled. The king's signet ring, once used to seal a decree of death, is turned into a symbol of deliverance. The festival of Purim, born from this event, is still celebrated by Jews around the world, a living reminder of Persia's role in their survival. Yet the Bible also casts Persia in a very different light. In the apocalyptic vision of Ezekiel 38, Persia is named as a key ally of Gog, the mysterious leader from the land of Magog. Together with other nations, Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah, Persia is prophesied to join a vast coalition that will march against Israel in the latter days. This prophecy, known as the War of Gog and Magog, has fascinated and puzzled scholars for centuries. Here's a rare fact. The Magi, or wise men, who visited the infant Jesus, were almost certainly from Persia. These priestly astrologers, known as the Magush in Old Persian, were experts in interpreting the stars and ancient prophecies. Their journey to Bethlehem is a subtle reminder that Persia's spiritual legacy is deeply intertwined with the story of Israel, even at the dawn of Christianity. But why does the Bible paint Persia as both a friend and a foe? The answer lies in the nature of prophecy itself. The destinies of nations are not static. They shift with the tides of history, the choices of leaders, and the unfolding of God's plan. Persia's role as a deliverer in the past does not preclude its involvement in future conflicts. In fact, this duality adds a layer of suspense and complexity to the biblical narrative, a reminder that God's purposes are often revealed in unexpected ways. As we look at the world today, with Iran and Israel locked in a tense and often hostile standoff, it's hard not to see echoes of these ancient prophecies. Are we witnessing the early stages of Ezekiel's vision? Or is there another twist yet to come, one that will surprise both nations and the world? The story of Persia and Israel is far from over. It is a living prophecy unfolding in real time, with each new headline adding another verse to a song that began thousands of years ago. Historical names and biblical references. To truly grasp Iran's biblical destiny, we must decode the ancient names that the Bible uses for this land, names that have shifted with empires, dynasties, and the passage of centuries, yet all point to the same region we know today as Iran. Let's start with Elam. Elam is one of the earliest names for a region in southwestern Iran, appearing as early as Genesis 10:22, where Elam is listed as a son of Shem, Noah's son. The Elamites were fierce warriors, and their capital, Susa, would later become the setting for the book of Esther. In Jeremiah 49:34-39, the prophet delivers a mysterious oracle against Elam, predicting disaster, but also promising, "In the latter days I will restore the fortunes of Elam," declares the Lord. This prophecy is rarely discussed, yet it hints at both judgment and hope for Iran's ancient people. Next, we encounter Media. The Medes, who lived in the northwestern part of modern Iran, joined forces with the Persians to overthrow the Babylonian Empire. The Medes and Persians are mentioned together repeatedly in the book of Daniel, most famously in the story of the handwriting on the wall, Daniel 5. That very night, Babylon fell to the Medo-Persian alliance, fulfilling Daniel's prophecy with chilling precision. Then comes Persia, the name that dominates the biblical narrative from the time of Cyrus onward. Persia is referenced in the books of Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, and Isaiah. The Persian Empire's reach was so vast that it became a symbol of power and influence. Yet its kings, especially Cyrus and Darius, are remembered for their unique relationship with the Jewish people. But the Bible's references don't stop there. In Acts 2:9, on the day of Pentecost, Jews from Parthia, Media, and Elam are listed among those who heard the apostles speak in their own languages. Parthia, another ancient Iranian empire, rose to prominence after the fall of Persia and played a significant role in the region's history. This detail is easy to miss, but it shows that the Jewish diaspora in Iran was already well established by the time of the early church. Here's a twist that few realize. The boundaries of these ancient kingdoms, Elam, Media, Persia, Parthia, overlap almost perfectly with the borders of modern Iran. The names have changed, but the land remains the same, and so do the prophecies attached to it. Each of these names carries its own story, its own set of prophecies, and its own relationship with Israel. Elam, judged and restored. Media, a partner in the fall of Babylon. Persia, both liberator and future adversary. Parthia, a silent witness to the spread of the early church. The Bible's tapestry of names is more than a historical curiosity. It's a map of destiny, guiding us through the twists and turns of Iran's past, present, and future. And as we follow these threads, we begin to see how the ancient world's battles, alliances, and prophecies are still shaping the headlines of today. God's messages about Persia/Iran. What does God actually say about Persia, about Iran in the Bible? The answer is both profound and paradoxical, filled with blessings, warnings, and a future that defies easy explanation. Let's begin with the blessing. In Isaiah 45, God speaks directly to Cyrus, king of Persia. This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I take hold of, to subdue nations before him. I will go before you and will level the mountains. I will break down gates of bronze and cut through bars of iron. Here, God calls a Persian king his anointed, a title reserved for Israel's own kings and priests. Cyrus is chosen not just to conquer, but to fulfill God's promise to Israel, allowing the Jews to return home and rebuild their temple. This is a staggering moment in biblical history, God using a foreign ruler as an instrument of deliverance. But the message is not always one of favor. In Jeremiah 49:34-39, God delivers a prophecy against Elam, a region of ancient Iran. I will shatter Elam before their foes, before those who seek their lives. I will bring disaster upon them, even my fierce anger. I will scatter them to the four winds of heaven. This prophecy speaks of judgment, scattering, and disaster, a warning that Elam's pride and power would not last forever. Yet, in a twist that few notice, the prophecy ends with hope. Yet I will restore the fortunes of Elam in days to come, declares the Lord. Even in judgment, God promises restoration, a future for the people of Iran. Then there's the prophecy of Ezekiel 38:2-39, where Persia is named as a key ally in a great coalition that will come against Israel in the latter days. This is the infamous War of Gog and Magog, a vision of apocalyptic conflict that has captured the imagination of scholars and believers for centuries. Persia's role here is not as a friend, but as an adversary, one that will ultimately face God's judgment. But here's a rare insight. The Bible never paints Persia as purely evil or irredeemable. In fact, in Isaiah 11:11, the prophet speaks of a time when God will gather his people from Elam, among other nations, in a great restoration. This suggests that even in the midst of conflict, there will be a remnant in Iran who turn to God, a thread of hope woven through the fabric of prophecy. God's messages about Persia are layered and complex. He uses Persia as a tool for deliverance, warns of its coming judgment, and promises its eventual restoration. It's a story of paradox, of a nation both blessed and broken, judged and redeemed, friend and foe. And as we look at Iran today, with its ancient history and modern ambitions, we can't help but wonder, are we living in the days when these prophecies are coming to life? Is there a remnant in Iran, even now, that God is calling to himself? The answers may be hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. The story of Iran in the Bible is not a straight line. It's a labyrinth of twists, reversals, and suspense that keeps even the most seasoned scholars guessing. Just when you think you've unraveled the plot, another layer emerges, challenging everything you thought you knew. Consider this. The very nation that once freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity, ushering in an era of restoration and hope, is prophesied to stand among Israel's greatest adversaries in the end times. How can this be? How does a deliverer become an enemy? The answer lies in the mysterious nature of biblical prophecy, where nations and destinies are shaped not just by politics, but by the unseen hand of God. Let's add another twist, one that's rarely discussed. In the book of Esther, the Persian Empire is the setting for a plot to annihilate the Jewish people. Yet, through a series of seemingly random events, banquets, sleepless nights, and hidden identities, God orchestrates a dramatic reversal. The very day set for destruction becomes a day of deliverance. The villain is hanged on his own gallows, and the Jewish people are saved. This is more than just a story, it's a pattern. In the Bible, Persia is a land where destinies are reversed, where the expected outcome is upended by divine intervention. Now fast forward to the prophecies of Ezekiel. Persia, allied with Gog and other nations, marches against Israel in a final cataclysmic battle. The odds seem insurmountable. Israel is surrounded, outnumbered, and on the brink of destruction. But then, in a twist worthy of the greatest suspense novel, God himself intervenes. Ezekiel 38:22 describes it, "I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones and burning sulfur on him, and on his troops, and on the many nations with him." The coalition is shattered, not by Israel's might, but by the direct hand of God. The world is left in awe, and the name of the Lord is exalted among the nations. But the suspense doesn't end there. Hidden in the prophecies is a promise that, after judgment, there will be restoration. Jeremiah's oracle against Elam ends with hope. Isaiah speaks of a remnant from Elam returning to God. Even in the darkest moments, the Bible hints at redemption, a future where enemies become friends and where the story is never truly over. And here's a question that keeps prophecy watchers up at night. Are we living in the days when these ancient twists are playing out on the world stage? Iran's alliances, its enmity with Israel, its role in regional conflicts, are these the opening moves in a drama foretold thousands of years ago? The suspense is real, and the stakes are higher than ever. As history unfolds, the ancient prophecies of Persia and Israel are not just relics of the past. They are the script for a story that is still being written, with each new headline adding another twist to the tale. If you're enjoying these unexpected twists and want to see where this story goes next, make sure to subscribe and share this video with someone who loves a good mystery. And let me know in the comments, do you think we're seeing prophecy unfold in real time? Let's take a step back for a second. If you're like most people, you probably don't wake up thinking about ancient Persia or the Medes and Elamites. But here's where things get wild. The connections between Iran and Israel in the Bible aren't just about old battles or dusty prophecies. They're about real people, real cultures, and some seriously unexpected twists. For example, did you know that the Magi, the wise men who showed up at Jesus' birth with gold, frankincense, and myrrh, were almost certainly from Persia? Yeah, those guys. They weren't just random travelers. They were part of a priestly class in ancient Iran, experts in astronomy and ancient texts. Some scholars even think that they might have been influenced by the teachings of Daniel, who, remember, spent decades in the Persian royal court. So in a way, the first people to recognize Jesus as king were Persians. That's a connection you don't hear about every day. And here's another one. During the Jewish exile in Babylon, a lot of Jewish customs and even some theological ideas got cross-pollinated with Persian beliefs. Zoroastrianism, the ancient religion of Persia, had concepts like angels, a final judgment, and a cosmic battle between good and evil, ideas that show up in later Jewish writings. It's like these two ancient cultures were in a cosmic conversation, shaping each other in ways that still echo today. But it's not just ancient history. There's still a Jewish community in Iran, one of the oldest in the world. Despite all the political tension, these families have lived in Iran for over 2,500 years, tracing their roots back to the days of Cyrus and Esther. Imagine celebrating Passover in Tehran, reading the same stories that connect your family to both Israel and Persia. That's living history. And here's something that'll make you think. On the day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit first came to the early Christians, the book of Acts lists people from Parthia, Media, and Elam, ancient Iranian regions, right there in Jerusalem, hearing the message in their own languages. It's like the Bible is dropping hints that these connections run deeper than we realize. So when we talk about Iran and Israel, it's not just about politics or prophecy. It's about a web of relationships, influences, and surprises that stretch across centuries. The story isn't just black and white, friend or foe. It's complicated, it's human, and it's still unfolding. Now, let's bring all this ancient history right up to the present, because honestly, it's kind of wild how much the old stories and prophecies seem to echo in today's headlines. Think about it. Iran and Israel. You can't scroll through the news for long without seeing something about their rivalry. There's the nuclear standoff, the shadowy cyber battles, the proxy wars in places like Syria and Lebanon. It's tense, it's complicated, and sometimes it feels like the whole world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. But here's where things get really interesting. If you look at the prophecies in Ezekiel, especially chapters 38 and 39, you'll see Persia, that's Iran, listed as a key player in a future coalition that comes against Israel. Now, I'm not saying we're watching prophecy unfold in real time, but you have to admit the parallels are hard to ignore. Iran's alliances with Russia and Turkey, its growing influence across the Middle East, and its open hostility toward Israel. It all lines up in a way that makes you wonder if we're living in the opening scenes of something much bigger. And it's not just about war and conflict. There are moments of hope, too. Every now and then you'll hear about underground churches in Iran, about people quietly reading the Bible, or about Iranians reaching out to Israelis online just to say, hey, we're not all enemies. It's like there's this undercurrent of change, a quiet movement that doesn't make the headlines, but might just be the most important story of all. Here's a twist you might not expect. Some of the most passionate supporters of Israel's right to exist aren't in the West. They're in places you'd never guess, including among ordinary Iranians who see the ancient connection and hope for peace. It's not the story you hear on the news, but it's real and it's growing. So when you see those headlines, missile tests, diplomatic showdowns, secret negotiations, remember, there's a much older story running underneath it all. The Bible's prophecies aren't just about doom and gloom. They're about cycles, about hope, about the possibility that even the fiercest enemies can become friends. And maybe, just maybe, we're living in a time when some of those ancient promises are starting to come true in ways nobody expected. Let's talk about the future of Iran, what the Bible says about Iran's future. So after all these twists and turns, ancient empires, unexpected friendships, dramatic betrayals, and prophecies that seem to echo in the news, what does the Bible actually say about where Iran's story is headed? Let's be honest, a lot of people get caught up in the doom and gloom side of prophecy. And sure, there are some heavy moments. Ezekiel's vision of Persia joining a massive coalition against Israel is intense. The language is apocalyptic, armies gathering, the world on edge, and then, out of nowhere, God steps in and everything changes. It's the kind of story that makes you sit up and wonder if you're seeing the first act play out on your phone screen. But here's the part that almost nobody talks about. The Bible doesn't leave Iran's story in a place of judgment or destruction. In fact, there's a thread of hope that runs quietly through the prophecies, almost like a secret waiting to be discovered. Take Jeremiah 49, for example. After all the warnings and talk of disaster for Elam, that's ancient Iran, God says something that flips the script. Yet I will restore the fortunes of Elam in days to come. It's like, yes, there's a reckoning, but there's also a promise that things won't end in darkness. There's a future, a restoration, a chance for something new. And then there's Isaiah 11:11, where God promises to gather his people from all over, including from Elam. That means even in the end, there's a place for Iranians in God's plan. It's not just about conflict, it's about redemption, about people finding their way back, about old enemies becoming part of a new story. Here's something that might surprise you. Some of the fastest growing underground churches in the world are in Iran right now. People are risking everything to read the Bible, to pray, to hope for a different future. It's not loud, it's not on the news, but it's real. And it fits perfectly with those ancient promises of restoration and hope. So what's Iran's final destiny, according to the Bible? It's complicated, just like real life. There's conflict, yes. There are warnings and hard truths. But there's also a promise that the story isn't over, that restoration is possible, and that even the most unlikely people and places can be part of something beautiful in the end. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real twist in the tale. So where does all this leave us? Iran, ancient Persia, Elam, Media, has been at the crossroads of prophecy and history for thousands of years. Its story is tangled up with Israel's, with the rise and fall of empires, with moments of both incredible kindness and intense conflict. And if you look closely, you'll see that the Bible's take on Iran isn't just about the past or some distant, dramatic future. It's about right now. Every time you see a headline about Iran and Israel, remember, you're not just watching politics. You're watching a story that's been unfolding for millennia, a story that's still being written. The Bible's prophecies aren't just predictions. They're invitations to pay attention, to look for meaning, to see the bigger picture behind the news. And here's the thing. The story isn't finished. There are still chapters left to be written. Maybe you're someone who's fascinated by prophecy, or maybe you're just curious about how ancient texts can still matter in a world of smartphones and satellites. Either way, the message is the same. Don't stop looking for the deeper story. Don't settle for the surface-level headlines. There's always more going on than meets the eye. Maybe the biggest twist of all is that, in the end, the Bible's vision for Iran isn't just about conflict or judgment. It's about hope. It's about restoration. It's about the possibility that even the most unlikely people and places can be part of something bigger, something redemptive, something that points to a future where old enemies become friends and where every nation has a place in the story God is telling. So as you go about your day, keep your eyes open. Watch the news, sure, but also watch for the unexpected, for the moments of grace, for the quiet stories of hope that don't always make the front page. Because the story of Iran and the story of Israel and the story of all of us isn't over yet. And who knows? The next twist might be just around the corner. If you found this journey through history, prophecy, and current events as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What surprised you most? What questions do you still have? Let's keep the conversation going, because this story is far from finished.